Hey guys, welcome to this presentation on reinforcement learning. Well, my name is Vishal Garg and I intend to publish and share my interpretation about the interesting subject of reinforcement learning on regular basis by answering three questions in each video. So let's get started and see what questions do we have for today. The very first question, what is reinforcement learning? Let's go and deep dive into it. Let's see a bit in detail. For this, I would like to uncover three aspects, starting with definitions, a piece of intuition, and then I will talk about in brief about the basic elements and characteristics of our RL agent. Let's then see and define the reinforcement learning. Well, there are various definitions of reinforcement learning around us. For instance, this one says reinforcement learning is learning what to do, how to map a situation to actions so as to maximize the reward signal. Another variant, which is a bit more elaborative, says reinforcement learning is a ML technique that involves an agent acting in an environment by choosing predefined actions with the goal of maximizing a numerical reward. Now, from all sorts of definitions, from these as well as from others which you might have read, we can have these keywords that kind of defines the reinforcement learning. That is, it is a ML type, it is another machine learning type. As we know, there exists supervised and unsupervised learning, and this is the third one. It involves an agent interacting in an environment, sensing states, taking actions, and then getting rewards for the actions taken by the agent in the environment, and with the goal to maximize the reward. So, where is the learning in all this? Well, the learning is in the policy. Let's see with an example this definition in action. So over here we have an example. For instance, there is an agent, this robot, this white cute robot over here, which can observe using its sensors and then based on a policy choose an action and touches fire. By taking this action, it gets a negative reward from the environment, which the agent learns and hence updates its policy. Agent now knows that in this particular state it needs to avoid choosing fire henceforth and hence selects other action. This process of reinforcing its learning through the experience continues over a number of iterations, which are also called as episodes, until the agent learns an optimal policy. So now, well, we have defined the reinforcement learning as a concept. Now let's see a piece of intuition in terms of business landscape. And there we go. Well, in general, if we see the four perspectives that defines the relevance of AI for a business enterprise, that starts with perception, which relates to getting data, big, large, streaming, batch, etc. It could be of different sorts, running analytics on it, such as reports, MIS reports, and various other reports. And then comes the inference, where we have statistical modeling, machine learning, deep learning coming in. So if we see at present, most of the industry is focusing on these two, that is perception and inference, since these are most mature as of now. However, the other and forward-looking perspectives are decision making and action taking. And there we see reinforcement learning into the decision making class. Now just imagine when enterprises shall be enabled to make decisions and not just get insights, which is also sort of inferential ones from the data. The whole turnaround time, efficiencies, productivity will go multifold, and there will be more number of new use cases that will be developed. And that's where the power of reinforcement learning lies. So now we define reinforcement learning. We have a intuition as well in terms of business landscape. Now let's go into a bit of details about RL agent elements as we defined that there is an agent which is interacting in a particular environment. So what are the elements and characteristics related to this particular RL agent? Let's look into that. Okay, so and basically a RL agent may include one or more of these components. A policy which is kind of mandatory one that determines agent's behavior. A value function that if it is there, it implies policy is implicit. A model which is kind of agent's own understanding about the environment. An agent can be a model free or with a model. We'll see with these with the example in the next slide. But before that, let's just look at typical characteristics that makes RL peculiar. First, there is no supervisor. That is, reinforcement learning agent does not work on instructive feedback. Rather, an evaluative feedback which is determined by scalar reward signal. Second, there are delayed rewards or an estimated ones. For example, consider this analogy. We may have a RL-based chess playing agent. Now, a particular move or sequence of moves may result in win or loss, but not suddenly just after that particular move. Third, in RL, time really matters, and that we will see when we will talk about different approaches in RL. Fourth, agent's action affect the subsequent stage and hence subsequent experience it receives, and that's where we will see the importance of exploration and exploitation methods. Overall, if I have to summarize, the two most important and defining characteristics are trial and search methods for experiential learning and the delayed rewards that makes reinforcement learning altogether a different approach in the context of machine learning. Now let's quickly see the examples of key elements of RL agent. Though I wouldn't go in much details, but let's have an abstract understanding. A policy that determines agent's behavior, that is, it determines what actions should an agent take in a particular state. Example here in this maze, if say agent is in the cell next to start, agent knows it should take a left. The agent eventually learns an optimal policy which corresponds to a map of best possible, or rather optimal actions corresponding to states it visits with a goal to maximize its rewards. Second, a value function, which is on the other hand helps in determining the prediction of future rewards, and it is used to evaluate the goodness or the value of a particular state or an action corresponding to a state. In other words, if I have to answer these questions such as how good is it to be in a particular state or how good is it to take an action in a particular state. Example in the same maze example, since a cell corresponding to the left of the start has lesser value as compared to the cell right to it, which is minus 15, agent knows it is supposed to move from a cell having minus 16 to minus 15 and eventually to the cell which has the max value, which is the terminal state near the goal and has value corresponding to minus 1. And then the third one is the model. It is something like, for instance, we humans have, that is our own understanding about the world, which may be different from human to human, from person to person. For example, this view of maze is an internal view of the full maze in agent's own perception. And that's why we don't see all the tracks which we saw in the previous versions. As I stated earlier, an agent may have a model or may be a model free and learns entirely on methods of exploration and exploitation, or we also call them as trial and search. And that makes RL a peculiar and efficient way to learn and adapt to dynamicity of the environment. So this was all about what is reinforcement learning and different aspects to define or to answer that question. Now, having answered, when we understood about the different aspects of reinforcement learning, let's answer this important question. Why do we even bother to learn about reinforcement learning? Well, again, there would be number of reasons that one may come up behind the notion of why. But in crux, I have following two reasons. First, RL agent learns by continuous process of receiving rewards and penalties, and that makes them robust to have trained and respond to unforeseen environments. Let's take this example. In case of reinforcement learning, it's all about experiential learning. And that's why we say give a man a taste of fish and rest he will figure out. Unlike supervised learning, where we need to explicitly teach or supervise him via the data, the labels, etc. Second, if we took look a market trends, especially from Gartner's hype cycle for AI in 2019, reinforcement learning boarded the wave. And even though it is still in innovation trigger phase, but that indicates the next and soon that will be a reality. And thus, it is the best time to learn and get ready for the overwhelming future needs that will open up new possibilities and shall be driven by techniques such as reinforcement learning. Now, when we answered what and why, the third and the foremost answer would be okay, now how can I go about it mainly on the same aspect like learning, reinforcement learning. And again, there could be number of ways, but here are three ways which I found useful while getting onto reinforcement learning. First and foremost, get a book with the title Reinforcement Learning and Introduction by Richard S. Sutton and Andrew G. Barto. This is one of the best reads one can have on this topic. Second, though there are a number of resources you may look around, but to start with, you can refer to a RL course by David Silver, which is a collection of around 10 videos and deals with RL end to end, and mostly deals with the content which is kind of analogous or similar to the book of Sutton and Bardo. So you can even watch the videos and then go over relevant chapters from the book to affirm the understanding of the topics. Then additionally, there are more resources such as a nice conversational styled RL course by Udacity on YouTube itself. And moreover, you can always follow my channel to go into the specifics in a Q&A mode. The third aspect is to get your hands dirty because without hands-on, this subject will become too overwhelming, and that's where OpenAI.com will help. There you may refer to GEM to go to over examples, environments, train your RL agents, tweak the existing ones, etc. Believe me, that will be fun. All right. So that's all for now. Let me know what you think about these Q&A and the whole content. Bye for now until we meet next with another set of three questions and answers about reinforcement learning. Do let me know in case you have any specific questions in the comment section and please stay tuned for updates. Thank you and have a nice day.